If you have a resolution to brew better beer in 2018, here's how to make good on that goal. Pick up the new edition of John Palmer's essential book, How to Brew. The fourth edition, available in paperback and enhanced ebook format, is a 600-page reference guide that can help brewers of all skill levels. Every chapter has been updated and expanded, and there are 5 totally new chapters covering malting and brewing, strong beers, fruit beers, sour beers, and adjusting water for style. What's more, the new edition has revised and updated information on managing your fermentation. Grab your copy at brewerspublications.com. That's brewerspublications.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 15th, 2018. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, homebrewer Chris McKenzie talks about his year-long quest to perfect a recipe for a delicious Red IPA. Chris brewed nothing but this one style for a year, tweaking the ingredients as he went along. How did it turn out? Stay tuned. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, our brewer's logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. And if you do us the favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment there, that'll help new listeners find us, or at least that's what they say. And if you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/Basic Brewing. Financial subscribers have already had an opportunity to see the episode, the video episode that I'm going to release to the public next Monday. I'm calling it Instant Pot Sour Ale. I used my Instant Pot to sour a 1-gallon batch of wort and did a no-boil hop stand technique. Steve and I thought it turned out really nicely. Spoiler alert. And then the week after that, I'm going to post a video of us tasting Steve's Mellow Mel that he started on Basic Brewing Video a while back. He started off calling it Turkish Delight, but it's now called Sultan's Delight. I guess it got better along the way. Whatever you call it, it was delicious as well. And again, financial supporters will see that one a week early, too. If you subscribe at the $5 mark at level, that's the word I'm looking for, on patreon.com. Steve and I got ambitious the other day when we shot for Basic Brewing Video. We shot 4 episodes that day. We also shot an episode tasting the beers from our Party Guile Brew Day, and also my first official attempt at a NEPA, or a New England IPA, which also turned out really well. And we got a lot of good content coming your way on the video side, and I appreciate Steve's taking time out to shoot with me. Since he opened Steve's Brew Shop, he's been a very busy guy. I mentioned my Instant Pot before, as I've been doing a lot lately. I took a tip from Paul up in Minnesota, who heard me talk about the thing. Paul says, you've mentioned that you have an Instant Pot from time to time. He's being kind. I mention it all the time. Paul says, I use mine to cook rice and then just add it to the mash. I don't do a regular cereal mash. It's lager season in Minnesota. It's an easy way to lighten up beers to keep them from being malt heavy. Have been listening since Basic Brewing Radio hit the web, Paul says. Wow. Thanks for the tip, Paul. And thanks for being with us for so long. We're sneaking up on our 600th episode, by the way. I followed Paul's example, and I cooked a pound of white rice in the Instant Pot and added it to the mash of a simple Pilsner that I brewed the other day. I chilled the wort down to a 55 Fahrenheit or 13 C and pitched some Imperial Urkel yeast, and it didn't do anything for about 24 hours. So I brought it up to the guest bathroom, which is warmer than the basement where I had it, and that did the trick. The yeast kicked into the gear, and then I put it back into the basement where it's very happy now. Lagers, they're a little more finicky than ales, or at least that's my experience, and so it looks very happy right now. I'm going to move it back upstairs to do a diacetyl rest to finish out the fermentation, to avoid those butterscotchy flavors. I'm looking forward to tasting that one. I also bottled my hop stand temperature experiment, my small batch experiment. I brewed 3 1-gallon extract brews, no boil. I just brought the wort up to 3 different temperatures and held it there for 20 minutes while I added the hops. I did 200 degrees Fahrenheit, or 93 C, 180 degrees Fahrenheit, or 82 C, and 150 degrees Fahrenheit, or 65 C. I want to see if there are big differences between those temperatures, when you're doing a hop stand, especially if you don't hop during the boil, like for a NIPA. And I want to see if any of those has a clear advantage over the others. It's kind of like the experiment where I added hops at different times during the boil, and then Steve and Casey Letillier and I tasted those. Same ingredients this time, just a different hopping technique, and then no boil as well. I want to take time out to brag on my electric brew-in-a-bag system from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. What I like about it is its stability and simplicity. I just turn it on to mash mode, put my water in there, set my strike water temperature, and just walk away. And I can get other things set up for the brew day, and I don't have to worry about missing the strike water temperature. When I think about how I used to do things, heating the water and babysitting the kettle to avoid missing my target temperature, pouring the water into the plastic cooler, taking another temperature reading, and then compensating for missing the target temperature there, and then adding the grain and hoping it didn't fall too far during the mash rest, the temperature. All that worry is gone. I just set the mash temperature on the Warthog controller after doing in, and I don't have to worry about the temperature. It's rock solid the whole time. And then being able to dial in the strength of the boil without worrying about whether the wind or ambient temperature is going to mess with that over the course of the boil. Of course, if you have a more sophisticated process than just brew in a bag, High Gravity has a wide selection of systems and Warthog controllers to fit your needs. Check all of them out at highgravitybrew.com and use the promo code EBC75BB. It's EBC75BB to save $75 off your electric brewing gear. Take the pain out of propane at family-owned and operated highgravitybrew.com. And if you have any questions about their systems, or if you have a question about my system, you can email me or email Dave and Desiree at highgravitybrew.com. They'll be glad to answer your questions. Okay, a little while back, Chris McKenzie emailed me about this ambitious experiment to spend a year in search of the ideal Red IPA recipe. And I thought it'd be fun to see how he approached the challenge and how his recipe evolved over that 1 year time. Chris McKenzie, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James.
Now, you've done a really interesting experiment over the past year, and you seem to have been really disciplined about it, and I'm anxious to talk to you about it. But first of all, let's get some background from you. How long have you been brewing, and what do you like to brew?
I've been brewing for somewhere around 6 or 7 years. Started off with mead, actually, and moved into beer after that. I kind of like to brew all over the map. Nothing in particular I focus on, well, except for what we're going to talk about.
And so you decided to brew one style exclusively for an entire year and kind of tweak it along the way and get the, would you say you were after getting the perfect version of this style?
I was after getting my perfect version of that style.
That's a good answer. It's a good homebrewer's answer there. And what was the style that you picked?
I was brewing a Red IPA.
And what was it about that style, that Red IPA, that brought you to it so strongly?
The style itself is kind of everything I like about beer. It's got that rich maltiness to it, but it also has that strong hop punch to it as well. Several years back, I had, I guess it was Sierra Nevada's Flipside Red IPA, which I don't think they make anymore. and that kind of started this for me. I brewed, I guess, what I thought would be a version of a red IPA several years ago, and I thought it turned out pretty good. And then I tried to make it again, or more recently, and some things happened, and it was not good. So that's part of why I set my sights on that this year.
And how did you go about formulating your recipe? What were the sources that you drew upon to make your recipe? Is there a clone recipe out there?
I think there are clone recipes out there. I wasn't necessarily trying to clone that particular beer. I was trying to take what I liked from that beer and kind of see if I could emulate that in a slightly different way.
And where did you want to tweak from where they were, the original beer? What did you want to enhance, and what did you want to sort of change toward your own perceptions?
I think originally I was just trying to see what I could do myself. I was much earlier into my brewing career at the time, so that recipe doesn't look anything like where it ended up. I guess to your point, what I was trying to do this time around, what I really enjoyed was the dark fruit character that I found in some red IPAs that I've had, as well as kind of pairing that with a citrus hop flavor.
And along the way over the past year, your goal was to refine the recipe, and at the end of the process, enter it into a competition, and along the way, document your journey in a blog, right?
Yeah, I did the blog mostly to keep myself accountable. I knew after brewing this a few times, I was going to get tired of it. I can only take so much of one style. I like a lot of styles, and I knew the day would come when I got tired of brewing this style and drinking this style pretty much exclusively for the year. So that was part of it. That was part of why I did the blog.
And where can we find the blog?
That's at brewublog.wordpress.com.
And that's brewublog.wordpress.com. And you've got not only details of each iteration of this brew, but you've also got tasting notes of other examples of the style that you found along the way, so that you can kind of benchmark.
Yeah, I was trying to, I think, take what I really enjoyed about other beers of the same style and see what I could incorporate, not just from one beer, but from many beers. And in one of those cases, it ended up being something I didn't want my beer to be like at all.
That's part of it. Knowing what you don't want too. So talk about your first recipe. What was the starting line like?
Well, the starting line was the recipe that I created when I was still newer into brewing several years ago. That was the recipe that kind of started this. So that was the recipe that I tried to repeat. That was a pretty simple grain bill. It was just 2-row and some Crystal 80. And then it had Simcoe, Cascade, and Centennial. Like I said, this started when I was earlier into brewing, so it's not how it would look today, and that kind of shows as my recipe progressed. But I had half an ounce of Simcoe at 60 minutes, half an ounce at 30 minutes, half an ounce of Cascade at 15 minutes, half an ounce of Centennial at 5, and then dry hopped with half an ounce of Cascade and half an ounce of Centennial.
And we got to say that this is a 5-gallon recipe.
Yes.
And you started out with 10 1/4 pounds of 2-row and 1 pound of Crystal 80. And apologies to our metric pals. You're just going to have to You're just going to have to get out the converter, take notes and get out the converter later. We're going to be talking about numbers a lot, I'm assuming. So this is you're an all grain brewer, so you had details on how you brew. So you have a traditional mash tun, right?
Yeah, I've got an igloo cooler that I've converted.
So how did you like the first version? How did it turn out?
The first version that I made this last year was not really what I remembered it to be. The first time I made it, I thought it was great, and it was probably the best beer that I had brewed to that point. Brewing it again, it was not really what I remembered it being. I think maybe part of that is part of my experience as a brewer, but maybe also my changing palate, maybe having a little bit higher standard of what I consider good. Yeah, but it's what I was, like we said before, I was really looking for this rich, dark fruit flavor, kind of plum cherry type flavors from the malts, and that just wasn't really there as much as I wanted it to be.
So how did you make the switch into the next version? And I don't want to go into details on each of the versions, but I kind of want to get an idea of your process and how you evolved, the beer along the way.
At the end of each brew, I kind of took stock. I tried to be very careful with my tasting of the beer and really concentrate on the flavors that I was getting, the aromas I was getting. I tried to really think through where those flavors might be coming from, kind of set goals for myself for the next time I brewed that beer. There were certain things I wanted to be done better. For that first iteration, it was I wanted some more of that dark fruit flavor, so I kind of always left myself with some questions to deal with and to try to answer. And I knew that the Crystal 80 wasn't really cutting it for the flavors that I wanted. So I knew I needed to replace that, but I wasn't sure what to replace it with. I wasn't sure if I needed more of that because it was a simple grain bill, just 2-row and the Crystal. So I didn't know if I should increase that percentage or not. The next time I was formulating my recipe and adding things or changing things, I would try to look at my goals from the last time and look at what ingredients might give me those flavors that I was looking for and pick from that.
And so what did you wind up doing with the Crystal 80?
I replaced that with Crystal 120. The descriptions of malts are not always the most helpful. The Crystal 80 and Crystal 120 have almost the exact same descriptions from the maltster's website. Both claim to have a dark fruit flavor, and I guess the Crystal 80 does a little bit, but I think the descriptions are written word for word the same, but they're very different. They're very different grains, very different malts.
So what kind of an impact did you have? You basically just switched out the same amount of the Crystal malt from the 80 Lovibond to the 120.
It was surprising. It definitely did have a lot more of the character that I wanted. I was definitely getting some more cherry and plum flavors, at least from this particular maltster.
And if you look at your website, there's under the post that says iteration 10 and competition results. You can there's a chart at the bottom where you've got it all a table. You've got it all lined out, as to what ingredients were in the 10 batches. And it looks like you liked the Crystal 120 because you stuck with it through the rest of the batches, but you varied the amounts, and then you started adding a specialty malt on top of it, and you played with that a bit.
The Crystal 120 it added the dark fruit character I wanted, but it just wasn't, the grain bill wasn't as complex as I wanted it to be. It was a little lacking. there's a big difference with the quality of complexity, I think. I played around with a couple different specialty malts, and I guess actually I shouldn't call them specialty malts because they're technically base malts.
Mm.
Each one that I tried added something a little bit different, and it added some complexity, which was good, but the quality of that complexity wasn't always what I wanted it to be.
It's kind of like making a soup, right, or or a stew. You add a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's a balance that you find after a while.
Yeah, there definitely is. If nothing else, this process definitely taught me my ingredients a lot better.
Yeah, I applaud you for this for more than one reason. But one of the reasons is that that we tell people, if you want to know how to make recipes, brew a bunch and pay attention to your ingredients and then what they taste like. And if you want to dial in a recipe, brew that a bunch and play around with it. And this is the perfect example. Where you could actually go in and tweak and add and over and over and over again and really get the feel for like what these hops and what these malts bring to the table. So you added on the third batch you added in half a pound of Special B, and then you backed off of the Crystal 120 a bit. So what did the Special B bring to the table?
It brought a lot of raisin and. Like I said, those malt descriptions are not always helpful because I think Crystal 120 also had a description of raisin in there, and I don't personally get a lot from that. A lot of raisin from the Crystal 120, but Special B was described with raisin and other dark fruit flavors, but I think all I got was raisin out of that. So that just wasn't what I was looking for in this particular beer. In fact, that raisin flavor kind of killed the citrus hop flavor I was getting. It really clashed with that.
So at this point, you're dialing in the color as well, right?
I was, yeah. That was I think less important, but I was trying to get it some sort of red hue. That had a little bit to do with the amount I added, but not a lot. It kind of helped guide me because I think certain styles are certain colors for a reason. That kind of helped me kind of gauge how much of each ingredient to put in, knowing that each ingredient's going to add a certain depth of color.
So after the Special B, you got too raisiny. You switched to Munich, and then eventually you switched to Vienna. And after about I'd say iteration 6, it looks like your malt bill was right about where you wanted it because it seemed to have stabilized during the rest of the batches. So what did the Munich and what did the Vienna bring to the table?
The Munich brought some good complexity. It added, I think, just enough more complexity to the grain bill that I enjoyed how it was tasting in those regards, but it was a little too much bread flavor for this style, at least how I imagine the style being. In my perfect version of this that exists in my head, it was a little bit too much bread, still detracting a little bit too much from the hops, kind of covering up the malt flavors that I was really looking for. The Vienna definitely added the complexity I was looking for without being too overbearing. What I was looking for that third grain was support for the flavors that needed to be there.
And you wound up it looks like your grain bill wound up 10 pounds of two-row, 1.2 pounds of Crystal 120, and then 1 pound of Vienna. So you just locked in on that. And it looks like, did you waited until you addressed the malt bill before you started playing around with the hops?
Yeah, that's correct. I definitely wanted to focus on one aspect at a time. It's definitely the way to learn your ingredients and to learn how you want a particular recipe to be. by brewing it over and over again, but you can't really know what's affecting the flavor unless you change just one thing at a time. And that's really what I was trying to do was, and, part of this was really for me to take a step back and learn a little bit more about brewing through this. And so I was just changing one ingredient at a time, trying my best to only change one variable. That didn't always happen perfectly. Consistency was a big part of this. This entire process definitely taught me to be a more consistent brewer. Trying to do the same thing over and over again definitely showed me where my flaws were.
And what was the biggest challenge during the whole process in keeping that repeatability or keeping that stability?
One of the things that plagued me for the first 5 or 6 times I brewed this was I had struggle hitting my target OG. I was where I wanted to be around for the first 2 brews, and then I was all over the map for the next few. And I looked at a lot of different things, and I kept thinking I had it figured out, and then I would change something that I thought would fix it, and it didn't fix it. I would come in a lot lower, and it didn't help that my mash tun is only a 5-gallon igloo cooler, so I was maxed out at 12 pounds. I could not fit any more grain in there, so the idea of the homebrewer's efficiency doesn't matter. You just have to throw in some more grain. I couldn't do that. So I had to figure out what the issue was. And after a few different things, I finally narrowed it down to the crush of my grain. I don't have my own mill, so I had to rely on my local homebrew store to mill that grain for me. And it definitely seems to be the case, because what I did solve the problem. It definitely seems like I was getting an inconsistent crush from them somehow. So I actually asked them to mill the grain twice, hoping to kind of get rid of any variation between the grinds each time. That actually helped. I was able to consistently predict my OG and hit it or come very close to it each time after that.
Yeah, I tell people, people ask me about, having problems with efficiency, and I tell people that my biggest variable, or the thing that solved my efficiency problem the most, had the biggest impact on it, was the controlling the quality of the crush. Sometimes you take it, take your grain, or you have your homebrew store mill it, and they are not as aggressive as I like to be, because they don't want to wind up with a customer with a stuck sparge. So, or at least that's what I've heard. Having either having your own mill, or having a conversation with your whoever's milling your grain, and then actually looking, sticking your hand in the bag and looking at the finished product. I think can really it is very important, and that's interesting that you discovered that. So how did your approach to hops evolve, sort of in a general way throughout the process?
I definitely moved the Simcoe to the end of my boil time. That was a hop that is something that people use for the flavor for good reason. And I was, I think, wasting it at the 60-minute mark. But like I said, that first recipe was from when I was a lot newer as a brewer. I put Magnum at my 60-minute mark and kind of kept that as my bittering addition. And then I kept the Cascade and the Centennial and the Simcoe, but all towards the end. My dry hops kind of increased along the way as well.
And we haven't talked about yeast. What was your yeast, and did that stay consistent throughout the entire way?
I was using US-05, and that did stay consistent. That was kind of next on my list after hops to play around with, and I just did not get to it.
Well, so at the end of the process, at the end of the 10 batches, were you happy with what you had?
Mostly it it didn't quite reach where I wanted it to be. I think it's a lot closer for sure. And one or two more tweaks would probably get it where I want it. But I guess not exactly where I want it.
And so you followed up on your original goal and you sent it, your beer, to the competition. You sent the last iteration. And what did the judges think?
They thought it was okay, which I'm okay with. The last one that I made was definitely a little bit out of balance with the bitterness, and I think they picked up on that pretty hard. I think tweaking that bitterness would help a lot, but let's see. I think they said there was some astringency in there, which I didn't personally get. Not defending myself, but I think I have to wonder if it was just the overly bitter aspect of it that they were calling astringency, but maybe it was, and I didn't pick up on that.
Well, you got a 30, according to your blog, which is, it's not shabby. It's pretty good. You scored a possible a 9. And two judges judged it. You scored a 9 and a 10 out of a possible 12 for aroma. That's good. Appearance, 3 out of 3 on both. Mouthfeel, 2 and 3 out of 5. Flavor, 9 and 10 out of 20. So flavor is where they dinged you. Mm-hmm. But I guess the question is, could you tell from their notes if they were dinging it because it was out of style or just because of personal preference?
If I remember correctly, the flavor notes that they had, the notes on the flavor that they had, talked about that they noted astringency or bitterness. I think one judge said there needed to be more malts to back it up, but maybe my IBUs were a little bit overboard on that one.
Well, but it's always good to get feedback from a non-interested third party, so to speak.
It definitely is, and that's a lot of why I did that. I think if I were to do this again, I would definitely have more people involved throughout the process, and not just at the end.
And so, are you sick of red IPAs?
A little bit. I will definitely brew this beer again, but it is going to be a little while. I'm a little bit burnt out on hops. Somehow it's a place I didn't think I would ever be, but here I am.
Well, they say, don't pick your best friend as your college roommate, because you won't be friends at the end of it. This is something similar. Pick a beer that you don't like as much, and then maybe you'll like it better at the end of the year. So is this the end? Are you done with the year-long experiments?
I'm changing things up and doing at least one more thing. This time around, I am including more people. I've brewed a stout and I have passed it along to somebody else. I passed a couple bottles and the recipe onto another brewer. That person is kind of carrying on what I did, and then they're going to pass it on to somebody else, and so on and so forth. Kind of like a game of telephone with a beer recipe. But hopefully at the end, instead of a jumbled message, we have a really good beer.
Well, that's cool. You're sharing responsibility. You're putting it out there to the community. Are you going to track every iteration on your blog?
Yeah, it'll be there for sure. I think there's kind of the reason I'm doing it this way this time around is I really think that we have a lot to learn from one another, and the only way we can do that is kind of getting a glimpse into somebody else's thought process and seeing how they perceive things and how they think through problem solving. And I think that's true for a lot of things, but it's also, I think it's definitely true for these recipes as well.
And so will you get to taste each beer as it goes along, or are you doing this with just local people or farther afield?
No, we've got a few people across the country, actually.
Wow.
And yeah, we're everyone will be sending me some beers, so I get to taste everyone. And so this time around, we'll have at least two people sharing their thoughts on the results. So it's not just going to be take this one person's word for it. And I think that will also help in helping each of us kind of gauge how to move forward. And
so are there any rules, like you can only tweak one element of the recipe at a time with each step, or what's guarding someone from taking the whole recipe down and starting from scratch?
Yeah, it is just a one item change. So it's kind of a continuation of the idea of what I did this last year, in that regard, where I kind of told these guys, think through to taste it first, to think through, what they like, what they don't like, what they might change if they were to brew it, and figure out those goals first, and then look at the recipe. And from there, kind of see where those flavors might be coming from, and change the one aspect of that beer that they think would most improve it.
And so have you got all your participants lined up?
I do. Yeah, there are going to be 5 of us this go round.
It sounds like a fun deal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun following this and seeing what other people have to say.
And you don't burden the entire responsibility for the whole project on yourself. You can if it turns out bad, you can spread the blame around. So are you going to enter the beer into a competition at the end?
I might this time. I might do that. The end of this is a little bit more open-ended than the last time around, since I've got other people involved. We've talked about possibly doing 2 rounds of this, so there would be 10 iterations instead of 5, but we're just gonna kind of play that by ear. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, it'd be fun to get it back around to you, and so you could take another stab at it and keep playing the game along. But everybody's got different schedules, though. That's one variable in the equation that when you get more people involved, you've got more logistics to arrange, and getting the beers brewed and all that.
Yeah, the scheduling of this has been interesting to try to get it brewed, shipped, and tasted on a timeline. So we'll see if I can keep to the schedule that we have set up.
Well, I wish you luck. It sounds like a fun project, and if people want to follow along, they can go to brewublog brewublog.wordpress.com. Right? I'm a little far away from my laptop. I can't see though.
Yeah, that's the site.
It's about time for a new prescription, I think. Well, Chris, this has been fun. I appreciate your sharing the experiment, and I wish you guys luck on the stout round.
All right. Thanks, James.
Well, thanks again to Chris. Again, you can follow how the year went at brewublog.wordpress.com. I admire Chris's sticking with the challenge and following it through. He's got more patience and stamina than I do. I like to brew a lot of different things. But I think I'm going to steal some of the elements of his recipe because I'd like to brew an Irish red ale for St. Patrick's Day. And that's coming up real soon. I've got to get on that. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies, early releases and recipes and such as that coming your way. Check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All-Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo. You get a free. You can also check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well, and our logbooks, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. And you can get, every order gets free stickers. Check all that out. Stickers at basicbrewingshop.com. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.